So thank you all for joining us. Thank all of you for joining us and being here today for this event. We're celebrating the progress we've made in with our schools, with our education, which is something that should be of interest and is of interest to every single Pennsylvanian. And I want to thank everybody here, all the legislators, all the advocates for joining all of us in this celebration. When I came into office back in January of 2015, our schools were struggling. After devastating budget cuts and I think if you remember this, had forced teacher layoffs, the elimination of education programs, and in not just a few cases, but in many cases, massive property tax increases. And I promised the Pennsylvanians, the people of Pennsylvania, the voters of Pennsylvania when I was running and after I got into the office, that I would work with the legislature to make sure that we change that. And the passionate people behind me today were key to making that happen. We all recognize that we need to recognize that education is our future. It's not just the future of the children in our schools and the children to come, it's the future for all of Pennsylvania. So in the first 6 years of my term as governor, my administration secured an increase of $1.4 billion, with a B, billion dollars in education funding, and that was a huge success.
Yeah,
so how about it?
Yeah.
But actually, after the cuts that had been made to education funding under previous administrations, in the face of the changing needs of schools and students, it was clear throughout that process that a lot more needed to be done. And that's why I was honored to sign this year's budget. It's really an important step. This budget includes the largest education funding increase in the history of this Commonwealth. That is a $416 million investment increase in our investment in high quality education in every community across the Commonwealth. It shows every student that we care about their education and we care about their future. It reminds every mom and every dad in Pennsylvania that we as a Commonwealth are invested in the success of their children, of our children. And it's going to help the next generation of Pennsylvanians to succeed right here in Pennsylvania, not in Texas, not in California, but right here. This is an important step in fulfilling our commitment to schools, to students, and educators. So what does this budget include? It includes $200 million increase in the fair funding formula, a $50 million increase in special education. It includes a $30 million increase for early education, and there are a lot of other things. And thanks to the hard work and advocacy, in addition to all those other things, thanks to the hard work and advocacy of Representative Mike Schlossberg, who's behind me here, who will speak in a minute. We also have an extra $100 million invested in helping the most underfunded schools in Pennsylvania. His new Level Up initiative is a groundbreaking program that will provide more equitable funding to 100 of Pennsylvania's most underfunded school districts. It's going to help us level the playing field and make sure students in these underfunded districts are not left behind. This is going to help school districts in many of our larger cities, but it's also going to benefit school districts in our rural communities as well. I have visited those underfunded communities, rural and urban, and it's clear that our funding does not treat every student the same. Every student deserves a chance to learn, and Level Up is going to help give them that chance. This is a life-changing investment for students across the Commonwealth and the communities they live in. So I want to thank again all of you who fought for this funding. Thank you for continuing to advocate for the needs of Pennsylvania students and schools and their parents. But now the truth is, here's the truth. This is an important step forward and it's worthy of celebration, but we still have work to do. We still have a long way to go before education in Pennsylvania is fully and fairly funded. Adequate and fair funding. We don't have that yet, even with this good budget. In 2016, our Commonwealth enacted a fair funding formula, chaired by a Republican senator and a Republican representative. It was a fair funding formula to fix our broken approach to funding education, which still distributes the majority of school funding based on student enrollment back in 1992. The fair funding formula was a major bipartisan achievement, but because it only applied to new funding, we're now only at the stage where 85% of investment, the investment that comes from this building to our public schools is still stuck 30 years in the past, 85%. So 15% is now going out according to the fair funding formula, still leaves 85% that is not. I was disappointed that we couldn't come to an agreement to send all the basic education funding through the fair funding formula this year. That's what I asked for in my budget, and frankly, we almost got there this year. We almost did it, but not quite. But that's what our Commonwealth really needs to ensure that every school district gets the resources they need to serve students and provide the high-quality education that will put our Commonwealth on the path to future success. We all need that. Not just the kids and the educators and the school districts that are being left behind, but we all need this. So I promise you that I will continue to fight for schools, students, and communities all across this Commonwealth. In the meantime, let's celebrate this victory today. And tomorrow, let's use this victory as a stepping stone to continue our fight for full and fair funding for all schools in Pennsylvania. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Tomea Sippio-Smith. I'm the Education Policy Director at Public Citizens for Children and Youth, PCCY, a member of the Level Up Coalition and the PA Schools Work Campaign of Education Advocates. Groups that are here today and all strongly support adequate and equitable funding for Pennsylvania's students. We know we have a long way to go, but we say thank you to Governor Wolf and the PA legislature for increasing state education funding. In a year with so many uncertainties, this increase will touch the lives of 1.7 million of Pennsylvania's public school students and get their learning back on track. For far too many years, some students have needed much more than a touch. They needed a lift, a way to level the playing field, because they go to school in districts without the resources to adequately serve them. They live in a state where the wealthiest school districts spend on average $4,800 more per student than the poorest. That is not fair, that is grossly inadequate, and it is certainly not equitable. But this year, the legislature recognized that. You, Governor Wolf, Leader McClinton, and so many other legislators took a step in the right direction to change that. And we could not have done that without Representative Schlossberg and taking the initiative to introduce the Level Up Supplement, because it gets fairer funding to the 100 most underfunded school districts, Pennsylvania's most underserved students, for whom profoundly inadequate resources sadly remain the norm. While we celebrate that the education funding gap is closing, we acknowledge that it isn't closing fast enough. We cannot leave one more generation of children in poor districts ill-prepared for challenges and demands of tomorrow. We cannot let one more child's dream of equity be deferred. Their futures, our workforces, tax base, and the state's economy hinges upon our decisions to do better. To turn the tide, consistent, adequate, equitable, and fair education funding must become our new norm. Every year, we must significantly invest in our students' education, and every year, we must level up and close gaps for our underserved children. We implore every lawmaker in Pennsylvania to keep up the momentum and adequately and equitably fund our schools.